Cheers. Hello and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge. Wow, we're getting awfully close to the season kicking off, and it's so close you can almost taste the rock-hard fossilised 420 pie at the MCG. Ah, yes. Tasty. Liam, how are you?
Yeah, good. I'm dreaming rock-hard fossilised 420 pies. And just the general atmosphere of footy. I wish I could have got down to one of the games. But I don't know, Seaford on a Friday 4:10 is a little tough to get to when you're working.
Yep, no, exactly right. Yeah, as much as we'd love to, but having said that, though, it was good to actually tune in to some properly filmed broadcast.
Oh my god,
games.
How much of a difference does it make?
Oh, no more vertigo. We're no longer like laying flat on our back, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the world to stop spinning. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Oh yes.
But this episode, Liam, it's the first of 3 mini eps. We will be discussing the practice matches, with this one covering the Thursday matches, the second, the Friday matches, and the third, the Saturday. So hopefully that makes it a bit more easier to consume our really intense analysis in bite-sized chunks as opposed to one beefy episode. And it allows us, Liam, to just go awfully crazy and deep dive into each game. So strap yourselves in. So three mini eps. So you can consume this one, you can consume the next one. I think we might be releasing these every day, just to space them out, so it's just easy on the eyes and the ears.
Yeah, it makes it easy for you to consume. I still feel like they're not gonna. I don't know whether bite-sized is just the right word for what's coming.
They're not morsels, are they? They're kind of like
they're still hefty. Still hefty. Yeah. Like I feel like it's not like a roast. But it's like a steak. I feel like a steak smaller than a roast.
Yeah. Or what about like or just sort of continuing the analogies with footy food. I remember like a box of chips or something. So it's not just one single chip.
Yes.
It's multiple chips. But still, they're big chips though. Long chips.
Yes, very true. And the benefit is it's not going to cost you $10 for a bucket of chips.
I know. Even though they've said they come out today and they've said that they're frozen food prices again. Yeah. But it's still going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm down to my last leg.
Oh, yes. But anyway, before we jump in, let's just quickly run through the socials and where you can find us on YouTube. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our channel and like the video. Obviously, you'll find us at SuperCoach Edge there on Twitter at SuperCoach_Edge, Damon at DamoJ88, myself at Liam Evans_95, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Search SuperCoach Edge and you'll find us there.
And also a reminder about our SuperCoach Edge group, which we mention every episode, but just a nice reminder for those of you who have not joined yet. It's free to do so, and we have a SuperCoach Championship ring up for grabs for the leader come the end of the season. So the code to join that is 249149. And also a reminder that we've opened up our Patreon for 2023, which gives you access to a cash league in the top tier, along with extra available perks in the lower tier. Just as much as in the top tier, of course, which include entry into our special SuperCoach Edge Discord group set up for Patreon-only members, where there'll be a deliciously special prize at the end of the SuperCoach Rainbow to the highest ranked. You'll also get access to an exclusive private room on our SuperCoach Edge Discord, where you can send us questions during the season about anything you're keen to pick our brains about. So trade questions, strategy, rate your teams, and more. And you'll get early access to our podcast and maybe data as well. I know we've been collating sort of offline, Liam, haven't we? A little bit of data in a spreadsheet. So we might make that available as well, just to help you along your way. And you'll also earn a shout out on the episode following your sign up to let everyone know just how much of a legend you are in supporting our venture. So access to the lower tier is $5.50 per month. Which is, as we said last season, it's the cost of a coffee, probably half a coffee nowadays, because it's just inflation. It's going up and up and up. And $15 per month for the highest tier, which does feature that exclusive SuperCoach Edge Cash League. But as you mentioned, good value for money is at $5.50 per month because you do get access to virtually, an exclusive league, but it's more an exclusive group. So open to anyone and everyone that joins up that lower tier. So for more info, head to www.patreon.com/SuperCoach Edge.
Yes, lovely. And we also have another reason to celebrate. We surpassed the 500 subs on YouTube. Yeah, I know. Woo! There we go. So it's time to activate our second giveaway. And it's quite apt, as we'll be giving away 5 free season-long entries into our Patreon $5.50 tier. So tune in for next week's episode to find out who it is, which means there's still some time to make yourself eligible to win. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment down below, weighing in on the contentious topic of whether Warple is a trap or a treasure, to make it easier for us to pull your name from the hat.
We are so overloaded with SuperCoach data and numbers. We can almost see it scrolling in front of us, just like the code in Matrix. So let's kick it off. And we might see maybe some therapists about that. So let's kick it off with the first match sim in the Hawks and the Pies.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Let's jump straight into this game down in Tassie. I don't know exactly where, but at Aurora Stadium. I'm not sure whether that's Hobart or Launceston. So sorry to any Tasmanian listeners there. But let's kick off with James Warple, 308.3k mid, 101 score. And it's a bit of a risky pick here. The score of 101 does show what he is capable of, especially when he gets those 58% CBAs. He's vying for the engine room alongside Newcomb, Ward, Day, and exciting rookie Cam McKenzie, who we'll touch on soon. But the question, I guess, is, will a down game see him in the doghouse? Which I think, with some of the comments that we've seen from, I think, Mitchell recently about just sort of the depth, for want of a better word, that they've got through the midfield with some rookies and some other players. A down game from one of their top, well, what they would classify as their sort of top performers, might not go down too well. He is obviously renowned for his poor disposal, putting it lightly, as his major weakness, averaging just 65 across his career, which puts a cap on his SuperCoach output and does mean his points are reliant on him sort of amassing bulk possessions, as opposed to sort of being able to rely on lower possession games, but obviously being able to hit targets. At his price, 308k, pretty awkward. But I think there's still upside there, but definitely not one for the faint of heart.
Yeah, no, I totally agree there. And just to drive that home as well, like we've mentioned it numerous times about his poor disposal efficiency. To his credit, he's actually improved, even though it is quite low for AFL standards. But just to sort of drive that home, in his draft year, his disposal efficiency was 43.6%, which was actually the second lowest of non-key position players of all National Combine invitees. So even though he's improved, you'll probably say that he's not going to improve much upon that 65% that he's averaging at the moment. So yeah, a big worry there. And I think for me, I think for AFL fantasy, I might select him in my team because it's not contingent upon him actually hitting targets. It's just bulk possessions. But even so, I think when it comes to SuperCoach as well, where you've got to weigh up that disposal efficiency. Yeah. Like you mentioned, his spot on the side is not assured. And we mentioned off air as well that he's now seen as one of the more established players. He's only 25 or thereabouts, but he should be expected to pull the load. And if he's not doing so, I think, Sam Mitchell, he's a ruthless, he was a ruthless player, and I imagine he's a ruthless coach as well. So I reckon he will not spare him the same, dishing out that was handed to Amira and Tom Mitchell by getting rid of them. So yeah, he's a bit of a worry still. But yeah, like you said, not one for the faint heart. But let's move on to Cam McKenzie, that exciting youngster. And he's priced at 180.3k, selectable as a midfielder, and he scored 99. Just super impressive. Looked really good, really composed. I know some people have tried to compare him with Josh Ward, who killed it in the preseason last year. and sort of gave a bit of a fool's gold, a bit of output as well, because he didn't carry that across into the season proper. But however, I think comparing the two, from what I saw, just the composure of Mackenzie, it looked like he'd been playing at senior level against these senior bodies for a long while. I was super impressed, almost as much as seeing Ashcroft for the first time, who just oozed class, like Dacos, like Walsh, similar class to what I saw with Mackenzie, just similar attributes, but overall looked really good. Second high CBAs for the Hawks with 61%, and shows that he's already being trusted in the engine room. However, I guess, yes, you are paying a premium for him in terms of that price point. But even though I've just said about Ward, keep that in mind, is that, if he doesn't come on and isn't able to carry that across into the season proper, maybe be prepared to downgrade to another rookie. But the upside there is the fact that he is higher price point. So it's going to be easier to swap him to someone if need be. But I think from what I've seen so far, even though it's a one game sample size, speaks for itself, but I was super impressed.
Yeah, I agree. I think good pick to start the season with. He, I guess as well, I think across the board, rookies are going to be slightly higher priced, but we're not seeing those really low price rookies that we normally like. I think we're going to have to pay a bit of a premium, unfortunately, for the points. Based off that, though, I do think he's definitely worth picking. But this stands for all rookies that we're going to talk about today. Make sure it's going to be dependent on them being named in round one. So just obviously watch out for their names. Don't just assume. But likewise, I think Mitchell has sort of said that they've got some depth across the midfield at Hawthorn, so there's sort of no sure picks, I guess, for the midfield role. So just be mindful of that, I guess. But yeah, I quite like him. He's in my side. Moving on to James Sicily, 624.7k defender. Goes without saying, primo, scored 96. Shows what you're going to get. Pretty base score, I'd say, for Sicily. Took 31% of Hawthorn's kickouts on the weekend and took 6 intercept possessions. That's where his scoring is coming from. 31% of kick-ins. That's good bread and butter for him. Obviously, I think he's probably not one that a lot of people are picking as a primo, alongside the likes of sort of lower priced Tom Stewart or Doherty or Dawson, who come in a little bit cheaper. But Sis, I think he's going to do well. We saw what he could do last year. I don't think it's going to change. I mean, there's always the concern with him that he could get thrown forward, but I doubt it. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, he is in, compared to, say, Doherty and Stewart at the moment, Stewart's in 34%, Doherty 30%, and Sicily all the way down at 21%. So he's probably considered a bit of a pod in comparison, just above Jordan Dawson with 17% of teams.
Really?
So, yeah, if you're kind of after someone just as a point of difference, you could potentially go for Sicily off the back of that. But, yeah, I think either way, as we've spoken about across the preseason so far, it's kind of, you're kind of picking from a good bunch either way.
Yeah.
It's going to be ebbs and flows. They're all going to score around about the same mark. So I think for me, Sicily, if you do like him, is a lock and load. And from what we've seen so far, looking pretty promising.
Yeah, agree. The only thing is he's 20k more than the likes of Tom Stewart. So that's where I think people might be also trying to save a little bit of cash.
Yep. No, that's a very good point. Very, very good point. Let's move on to the next player, and it is Jai Newcomb. He's priced at 478.2k as a midfielder, and he scored 92 on the weekend and led the way in CBAs for the Hawks with 77%. And at his price, you're probably picking him as a keeper, you'd think, because just to give a bit of perspective, if he makes 150k, he gets up to 628.2, which is sort of in the realm of around about, a Bont or a McRae, thereabouts anyway. So if he's scoring that well, might as well just keep him instead of wasting a trade to trade him to another genuine primo. So he does sit at an extremely awkward price inside the, in terms of those players selectable in the midfield. So maybe weigh that up. But yes, the opportunity does present itself. He has shown a tendency to score quite well. Loves a cuddle, loves a tackle. So that kind of gives him a bit of a high floor. He scored well enough. And if you want to go for a pod, I think he should be a relative pod in perspective to other players.
Yeah, agreed. I reckon if he was priced closer to Warple's price, then I would feel more comfortable. I think at that 478K mark, it's just a little bit too high.
Yeah.
Because you do kind of have to really almost keep him because he's getting to that 628K. It's sort of just verging on keeper. So yeah, probably a miss for me, but the opportunity might probably, again, not for the faint of heart, I guess. Sometimes you got to risk it. But moving on to his teammate, obviously, Will Day, 362.1K, true mid-pricer, defensive eligible, 89 score on the weekend. And the former defender has finally transitioned into that midfield position with 52% of CBAs. As I said, a true mid-pricer in the defensive line. You'd probably expect he's competing against the likes of Yo. Maybe Bowser's a bit cheaper than that, but yeah, definitely Yo for that same spot in most sides. So it's probably a bit of a risk to take both, and you'd be eating into cash that you'd be using somewhere else. I don't know how you do it. But I guess the upside is definitely there for him. And as I said, could present as a bit of a pod compared to the more popular pick in Yo. So again, I mean, that comes with its risks as well. When you're looking at a mid-pricer as a pod, could hurt you.
Yeah, totally agree. I did have a brief fleeting look at him, but for me, we're probably a season or two ahead of schedule, I reckon. Even though he showed an ability to score well on the weekend, he just looks, just in terms of physicality, he's very slight in size still. And I can see him being pushed around and copping a few hits here and there. But yeah, for me, it's a pass at this stage, but one to watch for seasons to come, potentially. Let's move on to another player, a more mature age player in Fergus Green. He's priced at 123.8K, selectable as a forward, and he did impress. He scored 88 on the weekend and looked lively in not only this game, but in both preseason games, and managed a decent score of the 88 and kicked 3 goals, 2 behind. So actually, he probably missed a bit of a gimme there. Should have at least kicked 4. But looked really good even when he didn't have the ball in his hands. I think he gave off another goal as well, or there was a goal assist there, and good pressure acts as well for a forward of his size. So as a mature ager, there's no doubt about it. He could be SuperCoach gold, but be mindful of his medium-sized forward status because he will be reliant upon goals and maintaining those forward pressure acts as well in order to build a score outside of kicking goals. So, I mean, the one thing for him is that his job security does look sound with the Hawks' lack of forward options. It's probably him and Kajitsky who are the main two pronged attack up forward for the Hawks. Yeah. So I think the opportunity will be there for him to play nearly every game. And at that price point of 123.8, you can't go wrong. I think everyone should be selecting him at least on their bench. And his scoring will be volatile from week to week because of his role. But yeah, I think he's going to be a great cash cow.
I agree entirely. I would keep him firmly planted on the bench at this stage, especially for round 1, until we get a bit more visibility of his scoring. But moving on to the ruck, got Lloyd Meek here, 431.1K, scored just 66. Once again, though, he shared time with Reeves in the ruck, taking only 51% of ruck contests. So I suppose he did get the majority. Something positive out of that. But I guess it really doesn't bode that well for him longer term. Again, I think, I did consider him fleetingly early in the preseason because I kind of thought coming across probably gets more opportunity. It could be a player that, you can get relatively cheaper, but I think early indications aren't that great and probably isn't worth the gamble at this stage unless you can take that outright ruck mantle. So it is a pass for me.
Yep. Yeah, same for me as well. I did look at him just in terms of trying to be frugal, save a bit of coin. But yeah, from what we've seen so far, he's just one of those ruckmen who is stuck in a timeshare. So unfortunately for him, and he could be stuck in another timeshare as well, a holiday home. But he for me is one to pass up. Let's look at the opposition side of things with the top scorer, and a bit of a pod mention here for those pod hunters out there, and it is Jordan De Goey. He's priced at 468.7K, selectable as a mid only this season, and he top scored with 120 for the Pies and showed what he can produce as a pure midfielder after being given equal most CBAs with 65%. He's flashed a relatively high ceiling in the past when played predominantly as a midfielder, and could be potentially stepping into a role we were hoping Nick Dacos would be stepping into. Maybe. Who knows? But Lipinski played, he's probably one guy whose role he's kind of taken in the midfield. He did play a bit more time in the forward pocket. And now with Lipinski out with a shoulder injury, there's a bit more confusion as to whether or not, De Goey will go back into the forward mid timeshare role going forward. Or alternatively, is this one of the biggest under the radar players? Because I haven't really heard him being spoken about anywhere. And I was kind of surprised to see, he actually played really well, but surprised to see him score as high as he did because I wasn't bargaining on that at all. So is this potentially a breakout season for the biggest sleeper of 2023? It's a big call, but yeah.
It's a big call. It's a big call. I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I think, again, awkward price. Not as awkward, but I think potentially more volatile in scoring. We just don't know with Lipinski going down. Does he spend a bit more time forward? What does that do to his scoring? Probably decreases it. I'm probably not looking for someone in that price point personally. But again, if you're really looking for, I don't know what his selections are, but
he's at 5%.
Yeah, pod status. So probably a miss for me. But I guess if you really like pods or you really like Jordan De Goey, get him in.
Yeah. If you like to live dangerously.
I don't know if I'd recommend it though.
No. I was just throwing the bait out there to you, Liam.
I do like it. I do.
You'd gobble it up, but you didn't. Thankfully, you've passed the test.
I mean, 120 is not. They played. I mean, we also got to be mindful. They played Hawthorn. Like they didn't play a super solid mid. A team with a really strong midfield. So we probably do have to be a little bit mindful of that as well when we talk about mid options for Collingwood in this game. But moving on to ex Hawthorn player Tom Mitchell, 528.6k, mid eligible, 101, obviously new recruit. He did send a bit of a scare through us last week. Well, not necessarily me, I wasn't an owner, but I was scared for them after he was played forward. But he did bounce back this week with 19 CBAs against the Hawks. Opportunity should be there for him at the Pies, who were in need of a bit of a centre clearance specialist. And this is sort of the thing that I've thought about a little bit as well. And Pendlebury's kind of confirmed it for me. Pendles was quoted recently as saying it's not going to be the Tom Mitchell who goes out there and has 35 or 40 possessions every week, which does suggest that the days of amassing bulk pill are behind him, and probably lowers his scoring ceiling. And I think I spoke about this in an earlier. I think the way that Collingwood sort of play, I imagine that as a centre in the centre clearance, he's probably going to be one that just distributes to the likes of Jordan De Goey or to the likes of Jack Crisp, who then stream forward and sort of it's more that in and under, but distributing it to the runners, where he's not going to necessarily get that 1-2 handball, where he can amass that 35, 40, 50 possessions that he used to love, especially against the Pies, which is quite interesting. But something to consider, I guess. But again, at his price point, I think there's the likes of Tom Green, who is pretty similarly priced, LDU, who we'll touch on in a later app. But other players at that same price point that probably warrant a pick ahead of Mitchell at this stage.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think when it comes down to it, there was that murkiness between going for Tom Mitchell or Tom Green as of, a few weeks ago. But then as we've seen with Tom Green, absolutely come out and smash it on the weekend and amass the 50 disposal or thereabouts in their unofficial intra-club the other week. I think we've seen enough now and heard enough about Tom Green that he is almost the next Tom Mitchell almost or Patrick Cripps, where he should be stepping into that role. And I think push comes to shove, you should be paying the extra 6K on top of Tom Mitchell in order to get Tom Green in. Tom Mitchell is now is at 14% ownership, and Tom Green is at 31%. So I guess if you're comparing the pair, Tom Mitchell is the pod between the two. So if you want a point of difference, you could potentially do it. But yeah, you'd be going against the grain massively. From exposed form as well with Tom Green, who looks to be an absolute gun. For me, yeah, I'm passing him up. I was never really big on Tom Mitchell anyway. I really don't like him in Supercoach. Again, much like Warple, I think his disposal efficiency isn't as bad as Warple. I think his career average is around about 71%. I checked it earlier. And yeah, he needs those bulk disposals to really make an impact because they're 1-2 handballs, doesn't really get much meters gained. And now being in a new lineup at the Pies, new game plan, and from what Pendles has said as well, just confirms that he's no longer needed around the ground. It's literally just his centre clearance work, and that's that. So as you said, it puts a limit on his scoring ceiling. And even though he might be consistent around about the 90 to 100 mark, I don't think he will be going above, much more above what he scored on the weekend when he scored that 101. So I am bypassing him, absolutely.
Perfect. I agree entirely. But what about the next guy on the list, Damon? Darcy Cameron. We were we had a lot of thoughts about him, I want to say, early on. What are your thoughts now?
Yeah, we were big advocates of him, I think. Drinking the Kool-Aid maybe to an extent because we didn't have him last season and saw how well he went. But yes, he's priced 465.9K, a cheaper ruckman compared to the likes of Hodor, Darcy, or Maxi Gorn, all those sort of players as well. He's a ruck forward, so that's the one thing that really we can hang our cap on, I think, because he provides a bit of flexibility. He scored the 98 on the weekend, which was pleasingly surprising, I guess. So, I mean, having said that, though, it is really hard to get a read on how he's going to go heading into 2023 because on the weekend he ended up taking less ruck contests overall than Cox, with only 44% going to him. But with that being said, he still managed a very respectable score there of 98. So the role as the ruckman is there, but the question really is how much of the pie he loses because of Cox. But having said that as well, like we were chatting off air, and we're just comparing games where he played with Cox and played in games without Cox. And you did actually point out his first 4 games that he played were with Grundy, and his last 3 without Grundy and without Cox. He scored 115, 108, and a 90. And then in terms of averages, playing alongside Cox, he played 14 games. So a majority of time, he was actually having that timeshare in the ruck, and he averaged 90.57. So it's still respectable, I think, with that in mind. A lot of people are doomsdaying about this, and they're like, oh, he's not going to score well at all. So that kind of goes against what people are saying there. But the question is, is he going to, I think based on that average, if he's able to match that, there's no way he's going to finish as a top 2 ruckman. So there's really no point in selecting him in your rucks. But my question to you, which you've pulled out some stats on, and I'll throw to you for, my question was, could he potentially be a top 8 forward? And you ran some stats for last year.
I did. And thank you for throwing to me because I have not got them up anymore.
Oh, well, as you get them up. But I guess, the one benefit of Darcy Cameron, apart from the fact that, yes, his time sharing with Cox is traditionally he is playing as a forward. His time at Sydney, early days at the Pies as well. So when he is resting forward, he's actually still capable of making an impact and scoring well enough, which is what we saw last year when he was time sharing in the ruck. And it's really something you really need to decide upon based upon your team structure. But yeah, overall, I think the jury is out on whether he can become that R2 that we're hoping that he might be. I think there's a bit of a limitation there on him, going above what he averaged alongside Cox last year with that 90.57. But you did make a good point. He did have a full season virtually under his belt where he was playing more time in the ruck. So more experience, maybe that equates to more high average.
Yeah.
You've got those stats?
Agreed. Yeah, I've got those stats down. So as you said, against Cox, with Cox on the side, 90.57 last season was his average across, I can't remember how many games. It was a few, was it?
That was 14
games. Yeah, so sizable sample size there. And I guess looking at the top 8 forwards last season who finished as a forward last by the end of the season, because we've got to include Bont in there. The lowest, so Moore was the number 8, or F8, essentially, the highest 8th best forward based off average, and he had a 94.6. So he'd have to increase his average by at least 4 or 5 points you'd expect to actually hit the F8 sort of position, best F8, I guess. But even then, I mean, you've got to look at it. Who gets, does the likes of Gawn get forward status? That increases,
Yep.
you know, you expect him to average probably much higher than that. Grundy, similar. You've already got Taranto, Dunks,
Rosie.
Cogs, Rosie. I mean, Butters could do well. You don't know.
Pushes him down the order, doesn't it?
Pushes him down the order, especially at that average. So he'd really have to be probably averaging in the hundreds to be worth a pick.
Really good point.
So that's probably the concern that I have there.
Very, very nice. Like that discussion point. And you've probably solidified in my mind, bypass him. Don't put him in.
On that though as well, just in terms of so the ruck contests were the 56-44 split to Cox and towards Cox. But it was quite interesting. It was actually the opposite when you look at CBAs. So Cameron took 55% of CBAs, while Cox only took 45% in terms of the ruck. So yeah, that's just sort of, I guess that they are still going with Cameron as their sort of ruck option when it's the centre bounce. So interesting to see that. But I don't know if that adds much. Just more an interesting kind of flipping of the stats, almost identical the opposite way when we look at it. But let's move on to the next guy on the list, and it is Nick Dacos, 502.5k defensive. A selectable asset defender, scored just the 72, and he did cop a hard tag from McGuinness throughout the game, but only took the 2 CBAs, which was a bit surprising, I think, considering we have seen that he was training as a mid, and did take the 3 kick-ins for Collingwood, which was 20% of Collingwood's kickouts. I will say one thing: if his base is 72 while being tagged, then it probably doesn't need to be panic stations. Like I think, I mean, I've moved him on from my side, I'll admit. But I do think of the fact that, but I do think in sort of on the flip side of that, we have to be mindful of the fact that teams that look to target him knowing that they can impact his game now, especially off halfback. Now, I'm guessing that maybe because of his tag that he started to play a bit more in defense, tried to drag them back. As opposed to being played in that midfield. I'm not entirely sure, just because it seems a bit strange that he sort of had such a backward step there. But I don't know, a bit concerning. He's made his way, as I said, he's made his way out of my side at this stage. I'm not against anyone picking him, and we've seen massive swing against him, I guess, in terms of ownership. I think he's been the biggest decrease in ownership since the games on the weekend. But I'm not against it, but I can see reason for concern.
Yeah, I've switched him out as well. Probably there's a combination of that. It's that, but also the guy who I replaced him with, who you've probably done the same thing, is Jordan Ridley.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's kind of stood out, and he's ticked all the boxes that we wanted him to tick. So it's a combination of both of those things. But yeah, as you said, I'm very much the same thing. If Ridley didn't pop up as much as he did, I probably would have persisted with Dacos. I mean, like you said, he's kind of that class player to score as well as he did. I mean, 72 isn't too bad. I mean, at that price point, you're expecting more, but to do as well as he has in his second year, whilst being tagged,
exactly.
I think it could be worse. Definitely could be worse.
Agreed entirely.
Let's move on to the next game, and it is Freo v Port Adelaide at Fremantle Oval. Is that a place?
Yeah. It is.
Oh, I didn't even know there was an oval named Fremantle Oval. It's just interesting. Was it their local? Is it like not the VFL?
It must be like their Waffles. Yeah, it must be one of their suburban grounds.
Spoken like a true Victorian. VFL people will be saying, VFL, you're not across the national game. Well, I don't live in WA. Anyway, having to argue with myself here. Let's move on to the...
What if you're from Queensland? You're like, the VFL.
Yeah. I just saw... the reason I said that is because someone from WA was complaining on Twitter about West Coast not having a documentary on Foxtel, or Fox Footy, sorry, in this case, off the back of their flag. Okay. And Daniel Garb, who's a WA journo, replied and was like, no, West Coast had a doco. And this person just reeled back and was like, wow. Oh, yeah, well, they've got a doco, but I mean, it wasn't as good a quality. And it was like, oh my God, you said initially there wasn't. Anyway,
just
that was quite funny.
Delete the tweet.
Just delete the tweet. Exactly.
So don't try and back yourself into it.
Yeah, it's quite funny. And Daniel Garb is like a West Coast supporter as well, which is even hilarious. So it's just like, no, No, he didn't. It was kind of like Billy Madison, him and the bus driver.
Him and her got it on. Woo!
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't. But you can imagine what it'd be like if they did, right?
Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Sean Darcy is the first player to speak of because he did top score with that 127. He is priced at 562.2k and did have, pleasingly, the vast majority of ruck time. Probably not surprising with 81% because Jackson did not play. Tracy took the other 19% of ruck contests. But yes, like I said, we have to probably be mindful of the fact that Jackson missed this game. But however, to counter that, in the match sim last week, the split was 75-25 in Darcy's favour. So potentially this indicates that Jackson, or the Jackson factor, as we should dub this now, isn't as big as what we first thought. And he presents as a solid option for R1. Have we got one here? Maybe. The other tick towards Hodor is his faultless preseason on the injury front, most pleasingly, given it was almost a foregone conclusion he'd be carrying some sort of niggle into the year, like he was in 2022. I remember it. We mentioned it the other week.
Yeah.
I was walking to the game. I was walking to the Carlton-Richmond game, and just the alarms were sounded. He's a laid out. He's not being selected. He's injured. So, yeah, I was expecting that across this preseason at some stage. Knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But, yeah, he's got everything going for him at the moment. So he's definitely one to consider. But I'd probably want to have cover for him, at least with the likes of a Radaglia up forward, or Darcy Cameron due to his injury history. Having said all that, so it could crop up still. The season hasn't started just yet. There's at least another week, a week and a few days to come. So,
Yeah, interestingly as well, he's owned by 12.2%. So he's behind the likes of, Darcy Cameron is owned by more people, 19.9. Tim English is 18.4%. Lachlan McAndrew is 16.6%. Jared Witts is 12.9, and then Darcy's 12.2. Then after that, it's Draper, Brodie Grundy, Max Gorn, and then it kind of drops off a bit there.
And Luke Jackson, 7%.
Yeah, Luke Jackson, yeah. Interesting. But I don't mind the Darcy pick. I wish we could have seen Jackson in the game, just to get a bit more of a sense of, is that 75-25 what we should expect? But it's hard to tell. But he scored well. He looked good, and he got, as we said in the match sim last week, 75-25 split could be a decent pick for R1, which I feel like I still haven't bedded down exactly what I want to do. I know who my R2 is, which is weird. Normally I feel like it would be the other way around. But R1 very much still up for grabs, and Sean Darcy is very much in the conversation for that spot. But let's move on to the ex-captain, Nat Fyfe, 313.6k, mid-forward eligible, scored 90, and I don't know, I'm kind of disappointed that he scored 90 because it's made him pop up back into my calculations, which I feel like he was out of them, and now he's back.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Come on, I've got to, I don't know. Anyway.
He's flashed you a bit of skin. It reminds me of that scene in The Simpsons where Abraham Simpson's is like fighting in World War II. It's Abraham Simpson dressed up as a woman to be a spy, and he's trying to seduce Hitler. And he's like, yoo-hoo! And his fake boob rolls out of his dress. That is not a real booby.
Won't you come home, Franz brother? Won't you come home? Yoo-hoo!
Ach du Liebe, das ist not eine Booby.
That's Fyfe. Oh, don't do it to yourself.
I don't know. Potential. I'm tempted, but the potential I think is there with Nat Fyfe, and the potential upside is big. He'll play, obviously, as we know, as a permanent forward, and we saw that on the weekend. But he still managed 3 goals, which helped boost his scoring to that 90. He'll only, I'm talking myself into this, he'll only need a couple of big games to skyrocket in price, an average 87 or thereabouts to make you 150k. The issue will be fitting everyone in, obviously, because, I need to have all of the mid prices now. But I also want to note he did play against Jonas, so not an incapable defender. Like it wasn't like he was on like, I don't know, a first year. Oh, don't do it.
I can see you've got SuperCoach open on another screen there.
Exactly.
And once I hear a click, I know what's going to happen there. Don't do it to yourself.
He's in there. He is one to consider, but I think, again, you're going to have to expect yo-yoing scores if Freo forward supply runs dry on a given week, unless Longmire pushes him into the mids. I don't think he will. But also, if I remember correctly, Fremantle have a decent run to start the season, which
Don't
again,
do this to me.
I don't want to.
Don't do this to me.
Hear me out. St Kilda, North, West Coast, Adelaide, Gold Coast, Western Bulldogs, Brisbane, Hawthorn until round 8.
And that's pretty much all he'll probably need to make the 100 to 150k at that stage.
Exactly.
Anyway,
let's move on. Let's move on before I actually get him in my side.
I've actually clicked. I'm actually on the SuperCoach screen now, and he's on 40. He's in 41% of teams. So that's three. That's the 6th most selected forward in the forward line. Wow,
that's huge numbers.
So I don't know. Like it's kind of that. Yeah, don't do it. But there is merit. There is merit if you're talking about the mitigating risk. There is merit because he's almost in half the competition.
Yeah. Exactly. I do actually agree. I think he's one of those picks that will either go really well or go really badly. Like I don't think there's going to be an in-between where it's like, oh yeah, it was okay to miss him because it was okay to miss him, but it was okay to pick him. I feel like it's either going to be you've set your season up because you picked him or you've ruined your season because you picked him. I don't think there's going to be an in-between.
Yeah, exactly right. I think for me, it comes down to him and another guy vying for the same position. This other guy who we'll speak of, I think in another episode, is Sam Flanders, who I'm eyeing off as someone that's going to take the next step. And that's one motto that I'm taking into this year. I think, excuse me, I might have mentioned it in another episode that I've changed my tactics now. Instead of trying to go for value former superstars, go for the next tier. Try and identify the next tier of superstars, which is what you've done, just foreshadowing a certain player who I won't mention who you did foreshadow in round 23 last year. But yeah, we'll just keep people's appetite and they can tune in for that. But let's move on before we get tempted to select Nat 5 to the next player, and it is Andy Brayshaw. He's priced at 615.6k, and he did punch out an 84 on the weekend. So he didn't really set the world on fire, but we all know what he is capable of. So with Freo only really playing 4 mids through the CBA rotation, we know that at least his role is certain. And I think he's probably one. Yeah. So his security role, tick. But that's not really a question. The question is that we could potentially pick him up as a cheaper fallen primo because like last year, and I can speak firsthand, being an owner in 2022, he did suffer from the tag at various stages. And this season, he has some early tag concerns because they play St Kilda in round 2 and West Coast in round 3. So for me, I think I'm going to bypass him. I haven't really considered him, I must admit, knowing what I got from him last year. He does have that ability to score well enough, although having said that, he's disposal can actually work against him at various stages. And yeah, I think he probably is one of those guys that until he irons the inability to shake a tag out of his game, I don't think I will classify him in the same class as, say, a Bont and the like. Yeah.
So, sorry, I think actually play St Kilda round 1, so cops a tag potentially round 1, but then
first up,
cops another one in round 8 with McGuinness in round 8. So it's not even like he gets a couple of early tags, drops in price, and then you can just bring him in. He cops a tag really early, probably cops one against West Coast because that's what they've tended to do when they play him. And then cops a tag in round 8, which probably, again, drops his score down. And then just to round it out, plays Hawthorn in round 24 and SuperCoach Grand Final. So don't know if you want to risk that one. So yeah, bit of a risk. Probably starting him, I'd probably bring him in a bit later, but just see how he goes. with those tags. Let's move on to Hayden Young, 508.2k defensive eligible, 79 score. Didn't set the world on fire at all. Did obviously take 4 kick-ins for the Dockers and played on from 3, which we like to see, but should have been 4. Always play on from all your kick-ins, please.
Must.
However, there was actually quite a great spread across the team with 6 individual kick-in takers, which is a bit of a concern. We also have to remember that Luke Ryan didn't play this match either. And that's a bit more of a concern, that he didn't step up, I guess, and he wasn't given that lion's share of the kick-ins. I know he was someone that, I had him in at one stage because I kind of thought this is his sort of year. I'm now a bit more concerned that it's not his year yet, or he's not ready to take up that
just yet.
Yeah, just yet. It might just be, jumping at shadows a little bit. But I think he hasn't shown enough for me to pick him and warrant the pick at this stage, especially as we said, same price as sort of that Ridley pick, who I think has the runs on the board in the past and looks like he's back in that role as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I looked at him fleetingly because I did want to start him this time last year and was kicking myself because I didn't start him because he was on the verge of a breakout. But yeah, the one contingent was that he's going to be taking the kick-ins over from Luke Ryan, and that would have been an easy way to elevate his average from 2022 to 2023. So yeah, now that doesn't look to be happening, I will certainly pass on Hayden Young. Let's move on to the other side of this game, and it is Port Adelaide and their top scorer, aside from Bergman, who we won't touch on because even though he was the top scorer, it's a 1-game sample size and we're not going to read too much into that, even though Bergman did score well. But let's bypass him and maybe keep a watch on him in the early rounds of the season. But Connor Rosie, he is someone that I've really warmed to.
He was your burn man.
Yeah, he was my
your
burn man.
Absolute burn man.
He was my burn man. But
I would love to go back and find a message from you saying that you would never pick him again, because I'm sure there's multiple.
I reckon I've said that more than once. You could wager that easily. But yeah, Rosie, I think now I'm very much, I feel like Kane Corns almost now. Like I'm almost falling in love with him that much that I'm almost on the verge of saying that he's better than Sam. Well, I won't say that. Won't say that. That's a big gag, that one. But Connor Rosie, lock him in. Like, enough said, really. He had 80% CBAs, and we saw last year towards the back end of the season the difference that he had in scoring when he had over 55% of the CBA. So it looks to have that midfield spot sewn up. That was the one sort of question mark, one doubt, even though it wasn't that big. Now that we've had that answered, my only statement I'll say is just don't overthink this here. Don't try and be cute. Lock him in. You could potentially, at that price point, even I don't even think you could afford to wait, really. I think he's going to keep going up in price. Yeah, if he averages around about that 100, he's going to go up in price. He's not going to drop below that. So I think, don't use him as an upgrade target. I would be selecting him, which I have. And likewise, you've probably done the same, Liam. Select him alongside the likes of Dunks, and don't stuff around. Taranto.
Yeah,
get him in.
Agreed. And I think the point that we want to make as well is 55% was sort of where we saw his scoring increase last year, CBAs, that is, and he had 80% and scored 111. Like I don't know what his time on ground was, so it might have been lower. But the point I think is that even if he drops down, like he doesn't have to have the 80% CBAs. Like we don't have to worry about if Butters gets a few more, because I think Butters only had 24%. If Butters takes a few of those, he's still high enough. He should still be high enough to maintain that scoring, which is good. Definitely pick him. I wouldn't be waiting. I think he'll be more volatile though in his scoring.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, especially if he is swung forward at different stages.
Like I think you'll see big scores and probably some, maybe in the 80s. But I think it'll average out to quite a good score by season's end anyway.
Just to add there, just in terms of his time on ground that you touched on, he was the equal most alongside Tom Jonas with 92% time on ground. So there's no question over his tank and fitness either based off that. So yeah, that's very good, especially in comparison to Butters, who I don't think we're going to touch on at all. But just a quick snapshot. Butters, a lot of people have been comparing the pair. Butters had 24% CBAs and only scored the 67. And he played 83% time on ground, but spent a majority of his time on the half forward line with those sort of small snapshots in the middle. So yeah, comparing those two, Rosie, if you were to weigh them up, definitely stick with Rosie.
Yeah, agree entirely. Moving on to a bit of a mid-priced, I don't know, risk, I guess. And it is Xavier Dersma, the I don't know, what is he, the poison arrow? That's what we can call him?
Shoot that poison. The arrow,
the arrow, he does that, doesn't
the
he?
arrow, yeah.
282.3k mid eligible, 86 score. Finished with 24 disposals and 8 marks, roaming across the wing for Port. He's probably quite a bit of a forgotten man, considering he was in that same draft as Butters and Rosie. And due to injury, sort of has dropped away, I guess, and been forgotten about a little bit. But he does present as a bit of not a bit, just a huge pod. His injury history does suggest he is a bit of a risk as a starter. But perhaps keep an eye on him for those early rounds and just see if he maintains that decent scoring that could get you some early cash, especially if if you have a 5 and he maybe fails, you could probably get a Dersma in if he's looking good.
Yep, good point. Could be Dersma, could be Flanders around about that point. I think Flanders is 250 odd. So if Flanders fails and Dersma looks like he's on an absolute ball tear, a blinder, whatever you want to call it, then you could potentially bring him in. The other reason is that the good mention there as well, just in terms of him being in the same draft class as Butters and Rosie, both of those guys are now on the verge of breakouts. Warrior is Magic, who some of you listening may be tuning into his content as well. He's always big on guys being of a certain type or profile when it comes to when players take the next step, and he's in that age bracket. He's in that amount of time in the game in terms of experience to really take the next step. The one thing with him, obviously, as you mentioned, is his injury history, so that may hold him back or at least stunt his development compared to those other two aforementioned players. But let's move on to the next guy, and it is Judas, aka Jason Horne-Francis. He's priced at 348.8k. That's for you North supporters out there, for a bit of a chuckle. He's selectable as a mid forward, and he had a high CBA percentage of 64% on the weekend, which was actually the second highest for all midfielders at Port. But his scoring is leaving a little bit to be desired because he only scored the 70 odd. But the one thing to factor in is that he had 6 frees against, which would have put a big dent in his scoring there. And it's something that he actually struggled with at various stages in 2022. He's a bit of a loose cannon, as we know, a bit unhinged at times for a bloke of his time in the game. So hopefully he irons that out. But yeah, I think it's probably obvious.
Yeah.
Looks to be one to avoid at this stage, just because of that awkward price point. No doubt he's going to become a superstar at the competition at some stage or another, but I think, probably a season or two too early.
Yeah, agree entirely. Moving on, I think just probably his high CBAs is probably why some people have sort of mooted or suggested that he's going to have that nice kind of potential increase in scoring. But as you said, 6 frees against, that's gonna kill you. As SuperCoach, if you owned him in SuperCoach and you saw him giving away 6 frees against, you'd just be, I don't know, remote through the TV style. But anyway, so not one to pick at this stage, but let's move on to Francis Evans, rookie, 136.5k, forward eligible, 52 was what he scored. And he's a forward rookie option that seemed to provide a decent enough score. 52 is not too bad. Kicked 2-1, so would need to hit the scoreboard to ensure decent scoring from what we can see there. Probably one to consider. Not too strongly, I don't think. I think there's probably better options in the forward line, but I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen on Thursday week where we get the team sheets out. So we've got to be mindful of all the rookies that are up our sleeves.
Yeah, he might be vying for the same spot as this next guy who I know you're a big fan of, Liam. I say this every time, and I know you're not. But
I've never once expressed any issue with Orazio Fantasia.
I just love it. I love getting into your skin. And it is, yes, Orazio Fantasia. He's priced at 203.3k. I really set you up there, didn't I? Really set you up.
I think the thing that gets under my skin the most is that I don't care. Like, I didn't care that he left, and you're just like, you care so much.
I know. It's good. It's just an ongoing gag, and it works out a treat. And Orazio did score 48 in the weekend, so he didn't really set the world on fire as you as you extinguish the flames of your mouth with that drink of water there. And he finished the game with 1 goal, 8 disposals, and 3 tackles. So, I mean, he's returning after missing last year with injury. So, whilst he should have job security, it's his scoring potential that will fluctuate, especially in his role. So, better options at cheaper prices, I think. So, yeah, probably one to avoid, and no guarantee that he actually gets selected, as you say, on Thursday week's time.
No. I think, yeah, it probably has some, I think, more job security than the likes of Francis Evans, but it just didn't, I don't think he showed a great deal on the weekend. And just, 203k, I think there's better options that we can look at. Moving on to Scott Lysette, 429.9k, ruck eligible, score of 36. And not what we wanted from Scott Lysette and Forget, as I think he's been dubbed recently. I think it's more Scott Lysette, just Forget.
Or it's Scott Forget, because you've forgotten his surname.
Yeah, just Scott. Yeah, bloody hell. 36. What? He was like the savior for us all of a sudden. Anyway, a poor showing considering he did take 59% of ruck contests for Port and had 18 CBAs. Was totally outplayed by Hodor. I guess to an extent you could probably consider that he was up against decent opposition there.
True.
Teakle probably his only real competition for a ruck spot in the game. Dixon and Marshall played as chop outs really around the ground, but I think Dixon may have taken a couple of CBAs, but really probably the majority of their ruck time came in the forward line. It was probably an unfavourable game. Could be tempted by the fact that he was managed for minutes and only played 60% time on ground, but again, is that a concern going into the season? Is he managed in game as well? I guess once the season starts. But even so, if we extrapolate that out to 90% at that scoring weight, he would have finished with a score of 54.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yep.
I think based on this, we can probably finally put a line through him. Unfortunately.
Yeah, yep. It is unfortunate because I was keen to get him in at that price point. Save a little bit of coin on Darcy Cameron. But now I'm going to have to bypass almost both of those plays now and spend up. Yeah, that's the beauty of SuperCoach. Let's move on to the last game. I think it is, isn't it? Of these
Friday
set of games. Thursday games. It has been a long episode, so thanks for sticking with us. I think we just ticked over an hour.
Wow.
But yeah, this is the this is the reason why we've broken up the games, so make it much easier. So this is a big chip, as we were saying at the start, a big supersized chip. But let's get into this Brisbane v Geelong game at Brighton Homes Arena. And first player of mention is the top scorer, and it is Josh Dunkley, 596.4k. He is a mid forward, as we know, and he top scored with 146. So, like Rosie, just get him in. Throw away the key, as Abs likes to say. Jump in your yacht, sail out to the middle of the ocean, and throw the key into the water. It's a lot of effort to go to throw away a key. You can really just melt it down or something. I don't know. Just throw it in the bin, maybe.
Just chuck it. Just in the bin.
just in the bin. Don't worry about buying a yacht and having to go into the ocean. Anyway, I'm going off a tangent. Have you got time to spare?
No, we do not. Sorry.
So he's 100% a lock despite his high price tag. He led the way with CBAs, had 31 disposals, 7 tackles, and kicked a behind. Lock him in.
Yeah, I'm not going to add to that because I can't. Just have him in your side. I mean, I'm assuming his 67.2% of teams. Come on, guys. Yeah. Should be 98%.
Yeah.
2% of people that just, I don't know, choose their own
adventure,
the team they're barracking for as their whole side. That's all that should be left. Lockie Neal.
Very true.
Lockie Neal. Moving on. Lockie Neal, 676.2k, mid eligible, scored 121. And I think, again, we weren't sure what the Dunkley effect would be with Neal with him obviously coming into the side. But a 121 and 18 CBAs, which are 78% for the Lions, shows that probably didn't affect him as much as we thought. Did kick an absolute monster of a goal, which did help his scoring, and only laid the one tackle. So I guess, I mean, I'm not sure what his average tackle counts, but you'd expect that there could be a few more points coming that way. But concern with Neil will be the fact that he could be tagged throughout the year, though he's unlikely to cop a tag super early in the year. Just having a quick look at Brisbane's, probably quite a few rounds in before they consider a tag. They don't play Hawthorn until round 13. Don't play St Kilda until round 15. Just depends on whether, there's anyone else that sort of pops up. So probably not too big concern, but one to consider, but probably a bit hard to fit in considering his price tag, and a lot of people opting for either near Oliver or Laird. So probably a little bit awkwardly priced in that sense. If he was probably a bit cheaper down, I don't know how much Bont is, but if he was around that price, maybe might be easy to pick him.
Yep, totally agree. He was one for last year, not so much this year for me anyway, just because that higher price point, way too expensive. Always got to look for value for money. And value for money is this guy here, even though he is a higher price rookie, and it is Will Ashcroft. He's priced at 202.8K as a midfielder, and he scored a 96. Wow. Just whet the appetite of all of us owners who have him, and it should be the entire competition because, like we mentioned earlier, this guy is like a Nick Dacos in his first year. He's going to be like a Sammy Walsh, a Clary Oliver, the like. Like he's going to be an absolute superstar already. Just the composure that he shows outside of a SuperCoach scoring discussion point. He just looks so silky smooth, time and space, like almost like Pendlebury. Amazing. So he's just another lock at this stage. Had 57% of CBAs for the Lions and scored that 96. Showed exactly what we were hoping to see. So you're really not serious if you don't start him. So don't stuff around. Don't worry about the higher price point. Treat him as if he's a 117K player because he's worth every single cent because of that output of 96. Output of 96 is something that you're not going to get from another rookie on a consistent basis, which he should be producing. Yeah,
agreed. Just get him in. Do not pick him. That's all I can say. Simple as that. Moving on to Connor McKenna, 167.5K defense eligible, 53. Not what we wanted to see. I think we were hoping for a little bit higher score than that. Did have the 14 touches, laid 2 tackles, and a decent enough disposal efficiency of 79%. Does come at that higher price point, so it's gonna take a little bit more higher scores to make that cash. But I don't think it's panic stations just yet. His score was negatively affected by an equal game high 5 clangers as well as 2 frees against. So I don't think it's panic stations yet, but obviously he's one that you probably need to watch to make sure he is named in the side in 2 weeks.
The other guy who is almost just identical in terms of his role and what he can provide, he's a little bit cheaper. It is Darcy Wilmot, priced at 123.9K as a defender, scored 52, so almost again identical. But yeah, like McKenna, his score was a little bit underwhelming. Only had the 9 touches and went at 44% disposal efficiency. So you'd think that, he should be hitting a target a little bit more than that, considering that he did keep his spot in the side across the final series for the Lions last season. But again, that suggests that the coaching staff do like what they see. He was played more along the wing over the course of the preseason, so he's not really vying for the same spot per se as Connor McKenna. So that's pleasing and suggests that you could potentially start with both players. So yeah, not real panic stations just yet. Just wait to see whether or not they are selected come Thursday week.
Agreed. Now moving on to the other side of the field, we're going to kick off with Tanner Bruhn. 311.4K mid forward eligible, 112 score out of nowhere, I feel like. Top scored for the Cats, and he looks to have sewn up a position in the midfield with 48 CBAs alongside just behind Atkins, Danger, and Guthrie. The role looks good, and scoring potential looks to go with it. 112 definitely made his way into my side after. He had actually made his way into my side before this, and this kind of cemented him in my side. But that being said, he's not in my side now because he's moved on for another player that seduced me to be in my side much earlier. That is Nat 5. No, just kidding.
Of course. I knew it.
He's an awkward price. And as we said, he's been competing with the likes of obviously Nat 5 at around that same price point. Sam Flanders, as you raised, and potentially the higher priced in the sort of that same position, the higher priced Errol Goulden for most. So, yeah, I think one that I would like to start, but you can't fit them all. You can't fit them all, unfortunately.
Yeah, for me, I think if he was maybe even 60K cheaper, if he was around about Sam Flanders' price, I would be willing to take the punt. But yeah, even so, I still think there's other guys that will be playing ahead of him. So yeah, for me, I'm going to bypass straight up. But I can see the appeal for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on to this other primo, and there's probably not really much that needs to be said about him, but there are a couple of points here that we have made, and it is Tom Stewart. He's priced at 604K on the dot, and he scored that 91 on the weekend, which may concern some people, especially when you're forking out over 600K for a defender. But we should note that he played only 75% time on ground, so he took the lion's share of the kick-ins for the Cats with 5, and he played on from all, which is pleasing to see. Great stuff, Tommy. And took 8 intercept possessions and 19 disposals. So I think he's still a good pick, but we need to run through a few things that we need to think about when we speak of him. So he does face early tag risks with a game in round 4 against the Hawks and a potential McGuinness tag. Doesn't play at GMHBA until round 6, but 3 of his first 5 are at the G, where he historically averages quite well. Not as well as GMHBA, but still well enough.
Still very well, yeah.
Yeah, so you could probably make an argument for and against him, but we leave him out at our own risk. I think for me, it comes down to between, and you're probably in the same dilemma, between Sam Doherty and Tom Stewart. Very similar price points, differing roles. And yeah, it probably comes down to who you think is going to score better in the early stages. I think for me, Doherty, just what I'm thinking about in terms of my head-to-head matchups as well. Like I think over the course of the year, they should both score relatively similar or average similar. So you're not really saving any money going for one or the other. But yeah, it's really tough, really tough. I had Tom Stewart in my side, I will admit, all preseason, and I've swapped him out the last second for Doherty, just because I like Doherty's potential still to play through the middle and elevate his scoring ceiling, whereas Tom Stewart, it is we know what we get type thing. So I'm looking for any little edge I can get.
Agreed. I've done the same. Stewart was in my side the whole preseason until just recently, where he's moved on to Doherty. I still think it's probably a bit of a coin flip between the two of them. Yep. I think Stewart has more volatility, I want to say, in his scoring. Not terrible, but just can have those really high scores, but it can also have a bit lower. Whereas Doherty's probably a bit more consistent, which probably is good for the first few rounds, especially when you're considering that, McGuinness in round 4 could be an issue for Tom Stewart. We did see him have that issue last year when he was tagged. I can't remember who it was, what game, but he had that low score as a result. But let's move on to a ruck forward option. 49 was their score. It is Esava Radaglia, 174K. And again, not one that I think didn't really show what we wanted, but also equally didn't show, I don't know what I expected when I think about it. Probably about what you should have expected. But he should be some pretty handy bench cover as an option, especially with his ruck status. Definitely not R2 Galea, as I've heard some people saying.
Very good.
No, please don't do it.
No way, don't do that.
I think it's way too big a risk. Had 10 disposals and 8 intercept possessions. Obviously, 3 clangers worked against him. And with the injury to Jack Henry, I think he should have some early job security in the season. I mean, Jack Henry was sort of trialed forward, and Radaglia is now being played back. So it's all a bit topsy-turvy, I guess. But I think he should hold his spot early in the season. So he's in my side, but he's not a sure thing in my side either.
Yep. He's for me, he's at a virtually an identical price point to Toby McLean. And I think McLean, even though he didn't perform to expectations, which we'll get into when we talk about the Dogs game, but for me, McLean has a bigger ceiling. And it's just, for me, there's too many unknowns when it comes to Radaglia.
Yeah.
He's playing in a position that we haven't seen him play at senior level. Reports have been that he's been going well in VFL, but can he replicate that alongside the intercept king in Tom Stewart? So he's kind of vying for the same role almost there. So I don't see Radaglia having a consistently high scoring base when you compare it to someone else who popped up again. We'll talk about him when we talk about their game, but Liam Jones, intercept king again, another player. So I think he kind of lacks a bit of that base. It's something that I was looking for when it came to Radaglia in defence.
Yeah.
Being that I mean, he's a good marker, but I think there's potential there for him to be better than what he is, even though, he did have the 8 intercept possessions, probably marking him down a little bit too hard, but I don't know, at that price point, I'd prefer to, when I'm thinking of him as just a pure cash cow, I'd prefer to save 60K and go for a Davey Jr. Or another rookie. Because I don't think I'd be playing him on field. It'd literally just be selecting him as cover for the rucks, which at this stage, I don't even know if I need. And I'm happy enough, even in the early stages, to even spare a trade on a ruckman if need be.
It's early enough, I guess. You're right. You are right. That's fair. That's a fair point, because I was going to ask you that, but you've answered it. You've answered it without me having to ask it. Oh,
there you go. Yeah, that's literally the only thing I'd be selecting him for is just the cover. I have doubts over him being able to score high enough to be on field. So to spend someone of that price point, to have them on your bench purely as cover, as potential slow burn as a cash cow, I'd prefer to go for someone cheaper that could make bulk cash quicker or make as much money as him in a quicker way. So just upgrade my team quicker. But I don't know. Where do you stand on that?
I have him, but again, not sold on him in my position. I think I like him. I think I've kept him because of the ruck cover, but now hearing you say why, like you can just kind of trade your ruck out anyway, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, forgot about that. I forgot that we have trades and that this is not the team that we have to carry the whole year. So I'm kind of, it's a lot of cash to have on your bench. 174K feels wrong to have that much on your bench as a player that's, I don't know how well they're going to go. As you said, doesn't quite equate. And obviously is competing with Thomas Stewart for the intercepts. But each to their own, I guess. Yeah,
the only reason I mentioned that in terms of being willing to trade out a ruck, I mean, he does help, obviously, if one of your main 2 ruckmen go down for a week or a couple of weeks like Tim English had during the year. So there's probably, as we've been saying, it does warrant the selection if you've got the likes of a Darcy or a Tim English or so many players or Darcy Cameron or whoever that could go down. But I think because there's no clear top 2 ruck at this stage, I'm willing to burn a trade if need be because I don't know. I'm not confident in the players, in the rucks that I've got being the top 2. So I don't know. It's kind of it's a weird way to look at it, but that's something to factor in.
No, I agree with that. That's a good point. Like we don't know who the top rucks are, so it's easy to burn a trade. Yeah,
but anyway, we could talk about that for hours and
for a long time.
We might revisit it potentially. Well, I think we will in the early rounds of the year anyway, and revisit it and see whether or not you know if you didn't start with him, if it's worth bringing him in, or if you've started him, like at that higher price point, I think as well that if he does start pretty crappy, you can afford to burn a trade to downgrade him to a genuine rookie like a Davey Jr. or someone else and save a bit of cash. So that's one way of looking at it. But anyway, that brings us to the end of this mammoth first mini episode, but it's not so mini. It's a big plump. It's a big plump mini episode. It's like a little mini sumo wrestler. It's just a sumo wrestler of a small stature. So it's small in stature, but large in size. So that is the end of this episode covering the first day of practice matches last weekend.
Yes, and as always, you can keep up to date on the news that as it comes to hand on our socials. And of course, if you're keen to join in the discussion, we encourage you to do so by commenting below this video if you're watching us on YouTube. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can catch us on our other socials. But first off, before I get to those, don't forget to answer the question about Warple. What was it? Gem or no treasure?
Trap or treasure?
Yep, trap or treasure. And yeah, you go in the running to win the 500 sub comp. But you can catch us on our other socials on Twitter at SuperCoach _Edge, Damon at DamoJ88, myself at Liam Evans _95 on Facebook, Insta, and TikTok. Search SuperCoach Edge, and you'll find us there.
Well, that's right. We'll catch you back here, same time, same place, with the next mini episode being released tomorrow. So look out for that after you've just gorged yourself on this mini episode that isn't so mini. We will be covering the Friday night games between the Dons and Saints, the Blues and Swans, and the Eagles and the Crows. So we'll catch you next time for even more player analysis.
See you guys.